There are some challenges that come with being in a world that is spiritual and scientific. One of which now is the distinction between hallucination and hearing God. Now, Christians around the world believe that they hear God. And according to what science says, when you hear a voice that is not from anyone around you, like nobody can hear what you are hearing, there's nobody speaking to you, no physical person speaking to you, that voice is termed hallucination. But we cannot discount the experiences of Christians because that is something that millions of people around the world are experiencing. And the DSM even gives a provision for that. They say we cannot consider an unusual experience to be problematic if there are some spiritual and cultural explanations for that. But that is just the easy way out. There are several situations that if we don't look at it carefully, we can just explain away disorders because the person gives it a religious coating. In this video, I'll be sharing 4 complex factors that we can consider, and when we see them manifest, we can see of a certainty that this person's hearing God is problematic. The first one is the level of impairment that the person experiences. So how does their spiritual experience stop them from living a healthy day-to-day life? Are they beginning to neglect their responsibilities? Are they beginning to withdraw from social situations? Are they now unable to reason about daily matters? Because the way the average Christian hears God, it most times improves the quality of their life rather than get them to a point where their life becomes worse for it. So if you see a person who claimed they heard God and their God asked them to run away from their family, to leave their jobs with no any plan of taking care of themselves financially, it begins to show some level of discrepancies that we should suspect. And the reason why I'm still saying suspect at this point is because there are some people who are doing all these things, and it is not because they cannot think for themselves, it's just because they have been exposed to wrong doctrine. People have taught them some things about God. They have taught them that you can believe God in a radical way, that if you run away from everything you have in your life and go to start a new life, that God is going to take care of you. So they are still logical, but they are acting in strange ways because of what they have been taught. So significant level of impairment is not a definitive sign that their behavior is problematic. The second one then is their manner of communication. Even if a person has been exposed to wrong doctrine, when you listen to them speak, there's some level of coherence in what they are saying, and there's a logical flow of their thoughts. So, like the example I gave where someone ran away from his family, or if someone is claiming that I am the savior of the whole world, if you listen to their argument, there's some level of logic in it. Maybe the person that claims that his God asked him to run away from everybody, he believes that when he gets there, his God is going to take care of him. So it is normal for someone to think like this. But when there is total incoherence, like their thoughts are not making sense, that is a sign that something is wrong. I remember there was this woman we saw in the hospital one day, and she claimed to have been kidnapped. She was not kidnapped. No member of her family can confirm that she was kidnapped. So according to her story, after they took her to where they have been kidnapped, a giant came and pointed a broom at her and used the broom to suck all her blood, and she died. She didn't say that she dreamt that this thing happened. She said this thing actually happened, that they kidnapped her on her way from church and her blood was sucked and she died. So we're asking her, if you died, how is it possible that you are still here trying to talk to us? She said even though she's here, she's almost dying because the giant is still trying to suck her blood. So from that story, you can see lack of coherence. You already died, yet you are trying to die. That is just one obvious sign that this person is not in the right frame of mind. If she were in the right state of mind while telling of this story, she should have noticed that this thing is not making sense. If I actually died based on my experience, I should not be alive. The third sign that the person's hearing God is problematic is the ability to reason with others. Now, I'm not talking about the flow of their thoughts, but if someone presents a contrary idea to what they believe, they should be able to see sense in what that person is saying. But people who have disorders, they cannot see the perspective of other people. So that woman that we're trying to convince that it is impossible for someone to have died and is still existing, she could not see any sense in what we are saying. It's just her own point of view that makes sense to her. And that's another sign that this thing is problematic. People who are just religious extremists and their beliefs are causing impairments in their life, they can still see the perspective of other people, just that they strongly believe what they say, what they believe, and they discard what other people believe. But if that person cannot get to a point of reason, they cannot get to a point of considering other people's perspective, then it is a sign that their hearing God is problematic. The last sign is when they adopt maladaptive behavior, which are primarily trying to harm themselves or trying to harm others. So you see people who are fasting excessively, they are dying, they are coughing blood, but they are still convinced that they need to do a particular fasting. They will refuse food, they will refuse medication, they might even get aggressive and try to harm others. This is just a clear sign that this person's hearing God, no matter their religious explanation, no matter how convinced they are that they are hearing from a supernatural being, it is just clear hallucination. Because one marker of hallucination among people who have psychosis and schizophrenia is that the voices they hear many times tell them to hurt themselves. Can either tell them to go into the road, let a car hit them, can tell them to take cooking gas, just very strange things, bizarre activities. Once these four signs are manifesting, there is no explanation that the person gives. Even though they say they are trying to fight a demon that they are seeing in other people, they should not be taken seriously at all. At that point, they are going through mental health issues and they should receive urgent care. As someone who has worked with Christians closely, I've noticed some patterns that if people approach their Christianity with, is likely going to lead them into problem. So there are many people who were fine until they started some religious practices, and those religious practices pushed them to a point where their new behaviors just became a mental health issue. So here are four counsel that I would like to give Christians so that they don't get into some levels of spiritism that will become mental health issues. The first one is that any voice of God they hear that is contrary to what is written in the Bible, it cannot be God. The second one is that the God of the Bible that other Christians hear and are seeing does not take over the free will of anyone and does not manipulate. So if you begin to hear a voice or you begin to hear a teaching that is in contrast to your free will and you don't have the ability or you don't have room to choose, then that cannot be a voice of God. If you continue in that path, you are going to get into trouble. The third one is that the God of the Bible prides himself in being a God of peace, a God of love, and there's no fear in his love. So if what you're experiencing in your life is confusion, if what you're experiencing is fear, if there's no peace, then it is not the God of the Bible. And the last one is to understand that the God of the Bible only promises leading, not necessarily voices. So if what you are seeking is just leading from the God of the Bible, you should not be pressing so hard to hear an audible voice. The God of the Bible can speak to you through the Bible. He can speak to you through an inward witness in your heart. He can speak to you through the voice of your conscience. He can speak to you through your church community. It doesn't necessarily have to be you hearing an audible voice. So I'd like to know a little bit about my audience. I want you to drop in the comment section if you have ever heard the voice of God, if it's something that is your daily experience, or you know people who have heard the voice of God. And how was their experience? Did it make their life better or did it make their life worse?